Wednesday. What up, y'all? Say what's up as you come in. Hit that like button for me. What's up, everybody? It's Wednesday. We are here and we about to get everything started up. I'm gonna pull these tabs up for you guys right now. Welcome to Cozy Corner TV, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Kieran Smith. Call me Q, and we are on the corner. What up, y'all? We on the corner again. I felt like I haven't seen you guys in forever. Not really. It was a couple hours ago. All right, guys, give me a minute. Let me pull these things up. I'm not pulling these up in order. Did I have it on? I think I did. Let's go this route. Yeah, good old Pete Hegseth. So I'm going to get to what's up on the menu in 1 second, guys. Just give me a second. Hit that like button, guys, as you come in. Say what's up in the chat. Say hi, like you always do every day. What's up, Q? What else did I have after that? Did I have, yeah, well, I think I went here.
We're going to kick things off here.
Shout out to Fox News. And then, I gotta verify this order, guys, so you gotta give me a second. Then I think I went, here.
Makes America great.
Yeah, shout out to Dr. Phill. And then I think I went here.
Of 2020.
Shout out to Thomas Sowell. And then we were at... From Cliff. I was gonna show you guys something different today, but I might hold off on that one till tomorrow. Guys, say what's up in that chat when you come in. Hit that like button for me. Say hi. It's Wednesday. I'm pulling up the tab right now. Give me a minute. Where did they go? I don't understand how these things move.
This is West.
Yeah, what up, Cliff? All right, guys. Thanks for giving me that time to pull this up. So, as per usual, I am going to go down the menu of what we will be digesting today. As I always say, please make sure that you are grounded, ladies and gentlemen, regulated, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because news can be triggering. So if you're not grounded or regulated, please don't watch this right now. But if you are, welcome to the live stream. So first up on the menu, shout out to the Economic Times. No more dudes in dresses. Supreme Court allows Trump's trans military ban. White House, Pentagon, hail move. Okay, Mr. Pete Hegseth, our very own Secretary of Defense, is going to talk to us about no more dudes in dresses. He was passionate about this one. He was pretty happy about it. I mean, most people are going to say this is a W, for the White House, for the military. As someone who served, I would say it is for the most part. I can talk to both ends of it. As I always say, have a friends, family in the LGBTQIA plus community. We'll get into that later. Then we're going to switch gears and go over to Fox News clips. How the left's attacks on Fetterman show what's wrong with the Democratic Party. Oh yeah. We went over a little bit about this yesterday, how it seems like the radical left, or maybe just the Democratic Party in general, is now attacking John Fetterman. And I'm like, Lord help them, because I don't know who these people are going to put out there if John Fetterman decides to be a Republican like Tulsi Gabbard did or something like that. The Democratic Party, man, I mean, they're having a hard time. This W President Trump got is clearly hard for them. Then we're going to switch gears and we're going to go over to Dr. Phill Primetime. Yeah, shout out to Dr. Phill. He has the truth about Trump's presidency 100 days in, the real story. So we're going to take a look at what Dr. Phill has to say about that and what he has observed over President Donald Trump 90 plus days in office. Then we're going to go over to Thomas Sowell. For those of you who do not know, Thomas Sowell would be a black conservative. Some would say a black political economist who has very much, I won't say far right, but I would say right wing ideas, conservative ideas. Some some African American folks might say he's far right just because they might disagree with him often. I don't disagree with him often. I agree with him more than I disagree with him. But with that being said, we're going to take a look at Sowell reacts to Trump's first 100 days in office. Then we're going to go ahead and end the live stream with a clip from Cliff Buell. Shout out to Cliff. Cliff is a YouTube content creator who focuses on Christian content. I usually end my live streams with him every night. If it's not him, it's usually another YouTuber who is a Christian and or focuses on Christian content. And with that being said, guys, let's get into the first clip of the live stream. We got Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth on the chopping block, and he's talking about no more dudes in dresses. Supreme Court allows Trump trans-military ban. White House, Pentagon, hail move. Okay, let's take a listen.
We are leaving wokeness and weakness behind. No more pronouns, no more climate change obsession, no more emergency vaccine mandates, no more dudes in dresses. We're done with that shit.
In a big move, the U.S. Supreme Court has allowed a ban on transgender military service to take effect while legal battles continue. The court's conservative majority issued an unsigned order lifting a lower court injunction blocking the ban. The order also indicated that the Supreme Court's three left-leaning judges, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, sought to deny the emergency request to lift the injunction. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt called the ruling another massive victory for the administration, while Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said no more trans in a post on X. Shortly after taking office in January, Trump signed a pair of executive orders that enabled the Pentagon to implement the ban, revoking Biden-era protections for transgender troops. His executive order requiring only male or female sex recognition impacts ID documents in government forms. He followed up with a directive on January 27, linking transgender identity with false gender claims and poor discipline. In February, the Department of Defense announced it would begin discharging currently serving transgender personnel. 7 service members, including Navy pilot Emily Schilling, filed a lawsuit challenging the ban's constitutionality. In the same month, the State Department also removed the option to select X for gender on U.S. passports. In March, a federal court blocked the policy, ruling that the administration lacked proof it harmed military effectiveness.
When President Trump asked me to take this job, he told me, well, one key thing, but really two. The first was, Pete, you're gonna have to be tough as shit. They're gonna come after you. Boy, he was not kidding about that one. This job requires a steel spine, and that's fine. My job's easy compared to what you do. We're doing the work on behalf of the American people and the American warfighter. But then the president, after he said that, went on to say, I need you and I want you to restore the warrior ethos in our military, full stop. And that's been my first priority since day one, is restoring the warrior ethos. It's one of the most fundamental of those 3 objectives. Again, humans, more important than hardware. Everything starts and ends with warriors from training to the battlefield. We are leaving wokeness and weakness behind. No more pronouns, no more climate change obsession, no more emergency vaccine mandates, no more dudes in dresses. We're done with that shit.
So provocative, Mr. Hegseth. Jeez.
We're focused on lethality, meritocracy, accountability, standards, and readiness. That's why since Election Day, since President Trump was elected, recruitment and retention numbers are up historically. Attracting military service is something Americans have long been attracted to, but more so when they see leadership they want to follow. They want to be in disciplined formations that value them not for immutable differences, not for the color of our skin or gender, but because of honor and integrity and grit and patriotism. They want a meritocracy where they can work hard, make themselves better, kick ass, and rise up. They're looking for adventure, camaraderie, risk, danger. They want to push themselves and test themselves against others. They want to flourish in an environment that embraces hard work, discipline, and the warrior ethos. Special operators know a thing or two about all of those. I've experienced it firsthand across the world. I have a chance to get up and do PT with the troops oftentimes when we're traveling. And some people think it's a novelty. It's not. It's always been a basic part of military service. You get up early, you get up, and you work out because we're going to be fit and we're not going to be fat.
Yep.
And even if the SecDef has a little bit of time to do it, every troop has an opportunity to do it.
He's speaking true facts here. It's like it's not a novelty, and I would think that that's very weird if that's something that's going on in the military today. Like if that's like a running theme nowadays, like working out or like the Secretary of Defense getting the opportunity to PT with the troops is a novelty. It's like, since when? That's what we do. We wake up at 4 a.m. to be exact. Well, you got to be downstairs at 4 a.m., so that means you would have to be up earlier than that, right? When you're on time, you're late. So you have to be up before 4 a.m. to be downstairs for PT at 0400, right? And then you're PTing probably until about 05:30, and then you're usually at work by about 07:30. The latest maybe 0800. So I mean that's just like a way of life. That's what we do. We wake up and we PT. You do that. You literally do that every single morning, unless it's a Saturday or Sunday and your platoon's like extra motivated and you guys are like, yeah, we're gonna go PT as a unit on Saturday, so we're not fat. And literally that's the verbiage that we use in the military. Like we talk like that. It's not really like we're trying to like body shame one another, which is crazy because when I was on active duty, body shaming wasn't even like a phrase. No, like it wasn't even like a phrase. Like, but it could be because in the Marine Corps we're not gonna talk like that. I mean, we are a fighting force of the United States, so it's like if you're fat and you're not in shape, then you're just fat and you're not in shape. That's pretty much the mentality in the Marine Corps. So Pete Hegseth is speaking straight facts here when he says like this isn't a novelty. It's like this is a way of life. This is what we do. We wake up early, we PT in the morning, we go to work, we PT because we're not going to be fat, we're going to be fit, and we're not going to lose wars because we're overweight and we can't run. Like that's just normal military protocol.
Firsthand across the world. I have a chance to get up and do PT with the troops oftentimes when we're traveling. And some people think it's a novelty. It's not. It's always been a basic part of military service. You get up early, you get up and you work out because we're going to be fit and we're not going to be fat. And even if the SecDef has a little bit of time to do it, every troop has an opportunity to do it. The problem is it went from let's do PT with the troops to every special operations group in the world trying to smoke the SecDef.
They were trying to smoke him during PT.
I find myself almost blacking out by the end of the workout.
That's hilarious.
And then having to hand out coins and try to stay right ways up.
Yeah, they're trying to smoke him
Appreciate
during
that.
PT, yeah. That sounds about right.
This group,
Dang, they're like,
have
let's
long
smoke.
been the standard bearers of what it means
Let's
to be an
smoke
American warrior.
Secretary of Defense.
An exclusive club where the cost of membership is commitment, toughness.
Yo, in case you guys don't know what smoke means when you go to PT, it basically means exactly what he says right here when he's like, I find myself blacking out at the end of every PT session. Yo, that's what it means. When I was in boot camp and we would hear the drill instructors like say smoke time, it's like, oh man, this is horrible. Like we're about to die. Like it's that type of thing. Like they're gonna run you until someone is throwing up. It doesn't matter who it is, but somebody is barfing. You're gonna push until you literally collapse, or it's yeah, man. It's a smoke time. It happens. Smoke fest. They happen at PT. It's a real thing.
Operations group in the world trying to smoke the SecDef. I find myself almost blacking out by the end of the workout, and then having to hand out coins and try to stay Right ways up. Appreciate that. You, this group, have long been the standard bearers of what it means to be an American warrior. An exclusive club where the cost of membership is commitment, toughness, courage, grit, paired with accountability, intelligence, and skill. At times, and this is a key thing and something we've seen firsthand, when the broader force has strayed from the path, has strayed from sanity, has strayed from standards, you have been keepers of the flame. So it's great to see so many outstanding leaders this morning who embody that warrior ethos. General Fenton, thank you for your courage, your determination, and your grit, showing your forces what right looks like. And of course, Command Sergeant Major Shorter, the real boss of SOCOM. Thanks for leading your troops and demonstrating that the U.S. military's strategic advantage lies in the strength, and it's true, of our NCO Corps. Like so many other SOF leaders past and present, you have kept the flame of the warrior ethos burning bright. You know, in 1943, naval combat demolition units were preparing for the imminent invasion of Sicily. Lieutenant Commander Draper Kaufman compressed their physical training program into a demanding week known as Hell Week. Even with the demand to get many more sailors to the line more quickly, Lieutenant Commander Kaufman kept the standards high. Between 30 to 40% of students failed the program, but those who graduated were ready. Today, the standards remain high across special operations training programs, and I thank you for that. In fact, we're doing standards assessments across DoD, and we started at special operations, multiple accessions courses, and the report back from the Green Berets and the Army Rangers that we sent the Navy SEALs to those courses is standards still high, sir. We're heading out to other formations and basic courses to determine why those standards have dropped and to make sure they're raised. In this particular instance, it included the Navy's rigorous Basic Underwater Demolition School, or BUDS, which traces its roots to Lieutenant Commander Kaufman's training.
Navy SEAL training.
As you know, it still features Hell Week. High expectations
Hell Week
and high
is
attrition.
crazy.
Soft, fat, easy, weak, mushy, and quitter are not the adjectives that attract these types of professionals. It's the opposite. And this will continue. We will never compromise. We cannot compromise on standards. Our standards will be high, and in combat formations, they will be gender neutral. Because the weight of a .155 round, or a rucksack, or a human being doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. All that matters is whether you are capable of executing that combat mission in front of you. I spent a lot of time in a town in Washington, D.C. where there's a deficit in one thing: common sense. I mean, that's why President Trump is so popular. That's why the American people responded. He leads with common sense. He's asked me to apply common sense. Our combat formations don't need to look like Harvard University. They need to look like killers, trained and skilled and prepared. The standards need to be high, and they need to be gender neutral. So that if you can do the job, you're in that formation, and if you can't, you are not.
Yeah.
That is restoring the warrior ethos.
Man, I can't tell you guys nothing, chat. I ain't got nothing for that. It's like the Marine in me is super excited and highly motivated. So it's gonna be hard for me to critique that one, because I skilled, prepared, ready. I stand by all of these things. You know, I was literally just thinking, like, memories were coming back to me as Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was talking, and I'm just thinking about certain things that just happened to you in just boot camp as a recruit, well before you get into the field. Like, I remember right before you go to the Crucible, you know, you're kind of like relaxing a little bit, And then it's like, man, the Crucible's crazy. Like from the first night that it starts and it kicks off, it's like it's crazy. And you know, a lot of training stages at boot camp was like that. And then right after, like you go to like a couple of different trainings shortly after boot camp before you get into the field, and you're actually in your MOS working every day and just like going back and forth to the barracks or your house. You go through a couple of training stages before you get to that point. And I just remember these training stages where it's like, man, it's so crazy the things that it pulls out of you, because he's right. You know, when he says 30 to 40% didn't make it, now he's referring to buds, but this is really any branch. You know, any branch to some extent is challenging because it takes you out of your normal everyday life civilian comfort zone. Like as civilians, if we are wet, we go get dry, right? We don't even really like always to be wet in the rain unless you're that type of person. I love the rain, but some people, it's like when it's raining outside and they're just going to and from a building, they're so upset that they're wet, you know, and they'll do anything to get dry right away or stay dry. And it's interesting because in training, it's like you're wet, you know, you got dirt on you, you're hungry, you don't know necessarily the next time that you'll eat per se. It gets better when you get out of boot camp. But when you're at boot camp, it's like you have no concept of time. That's why you can't wear a watch or anything. So it's like you're not really fixated on anything except the mission in front of you. So you don't always know when you're going to eat until you get closer to graduation and you get a better concept of time. And you're like, okay, probably around this time, your body starts to work like a clock and you figure it out. But it's like, yeah, a lot of those things happen in the field where it's like, you know, you're going through mud. And even in real-time war, you know, you're not always privy to a shower. You're not always privy to a hot meal, right? Sometimes if you get an MRE and you can actually heat it up, it's depending on like what's going on in training or where you're at in wartime, it's like that's like Thanksgiving to you. It's a miracle almost, you know? So it's like, it's real. I've been made to be uncomfortable so many times that it's like, man, when pressure is applied to me, it's like most of the time I smile in response to it, because so many people crack under pressure. So many people crack when they're just uncomfortable, or like if they don't get their way, they can't work around things, you know, and they can't work around things in a way to where they're still moving and grooving kind of smoothly, and things seem like they have a good flow and a synergy to it. So it's really interesting to hear P. Hegseth talk, because it's funny because the Marine in me was doing somersaults, and there was really no part of me that was disagreeing with this. It's like, dude, skilled, prepared, ready. I mean, you're asking me, someone who served in the United States Marine Corps, if my military is going to fight another military in the world that's fairly strong, right? We got a couple countries that I put up on that list, not many, but from my time in service, there's a couple of countries I'll say that slightly concern me. It's like I need my military to be sharp. Like I don't want to hear nothing about I don't want to hear anything about no DEI. I don't want to hear nothing about like, don't you want a soldier that looks like you? It's like, there are soldiers that look like me because I served with them. But they need to be skilled, prepared, ready. They need to be fast. They need to be decisive. They need to know how to work around things. They need to know what they're doing if their gun jams and they don't freak out. I mean, because depending on where you're at, like you can have a knife on the end of your M16 or your M4 or whatever it is that you're using, right? So even if you can't shoot bullets, you need to know how to slash that rifle in a certain way where you could kill an enemy. This is what I'm looking for. Like I don't care how many people. Like I need you to be skilled. If there's only one or there's only 10 gay people in the military, great. I'm not saying I don't want to see gay people in the military. I don't care. It's like, but skilled, ready, able to do the job. Hey, if you're gay and you can do it, great. That's great. If you're black and you can do it, fantastic. If you're white and you can do it, good on you. If you are Native American and you can do it, that's even better. But you need to be skilled. You need to be ready. You need to be fast. You need to be prepared. That's what I want to see in the military. And that's coming from a person that has served. So I'm pretty sure that my fellow brothers and sisters in arms would agree with me on that. All right, guys, let's switch gears and go over to Fox News clips. We have how the left's attacks on Fetterman show what's wrong with the Democratic Party. What isn't wrong with the Democratic Party? What isn't wrong with them? They've absolutely lost it. They've absolutely lost it since President Trump has won.
We're going to kick things off here. What's going on with the Democrat Party? Maybe a good place to start is looking at what's what's going on with Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman. Here's a little bit of a refresher. His journey to Washington was almost sidelined, as you remember, by a stroke back in 2022. That left him needing to rely on caption technology during interviews.
In small talk before the interview, without captioning, it wasn't clear he was understanding our conversation.
I'll hear someone speaking, but sometimes the media will be precise on what exactly that they're saying. I use captioning.
His campaign required that he be allowed to use a transcription program on his computer during our interview.
Then there was the debate against his Republican opponent, Dr. Oz, where he was clearly struggling.
You're running for a seat that could decide the balance of power in Washington. What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody.
Hi, hello, good night.
Okay, so let's talk to that point, because I see how they pointed this out, and they said that this was a struggle. I don't think this was a struggle. So I know John Fetterman is an American. Let's run that back.
Balance of power in Washington. What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
So this is a question they're asking John Fetterman and his opponent. It says Fetterman opens PA Senate debate with good night, right? I don't think that this was actually him losing it. So I think this is kind of like a cultural thing. I know John Fetterman is from America. I have to look it up again. I'm not sure if his wife is. I wasn't sure about that. But I know that I have a lot of foreign friends. My wife has been in America since she was a very young child. You know, she's become a citizen, but my wife also is able to, she's also able to relate this to her culture and other cultures where people open a statement with, you know, good night if it's in the evening time and they are at a formal event and they are talking to one another. So yeah, for Americans, I would say for us, this is not very common. I'm not gonna say I've never heard anyone say this. I actually have. So I don't know if I can attribute like him recovering from a stroke or being sick to him saying goodnight, because I know people that if it's in the evening and they're out with people, they literally have said, oh, good night, just the same way you say good morning. Yeah, I'm not gonna say the first time I ever heard it, I was a lot younger. I was kind of caught off guard a little bit, but I didn't try to make anybody feel uncomfortable. I kind of just inquired about it, and really the person told me it was a cultural thing. So I mean, I just thought that was interesting, you know, that they think that because he opens up with good night, that, I don't know, he's maybe displaying some sort of insanity. I think that's a reach there.
Hi, good night, everybody.
Hi, hello, good night, welcome, goodbye. You know, I have to admit at the time, I thought it was ridiculous that he was running for senator, but that didn't stop him. No, not his struggles. He ascended to the Pennsylvania Senate seat that he now holds. He won that election in November of 2022. But his struggles weren't yet behind him. Another health battle. In March of 2023, he was discharged from Walter Reed Hospital after spending 6 weeks there for depression. After that, though, we started to see a different side of Fetterman.
We stand with Israel throughout all of this. Hamas needs to be effectively neutralized before there's any kinds of peace.
When you have hundreds of thousands of people in our nation here illegally with criminal records and some actively engaging in crime, well, then they all have to go.
Greenland, for example. And I know there's a lot of freakouts, and of course I would never support taking it by force. But I do think it's a responsible conversation if they were open to acquiring it and whether just buying it outright. I mean, if anyone think that's bonkers, it's like, well, remember the Louisiana Purchase?
Senator Fetterman got more articulate.
Well, I mean, he did get more articulate, but that's not the plan. It's not the plan for President Trump to buy Greenland, but I get what he says. He's like, if that were to be the plan, or that were even to be on the table, he doesn't think it would be completely ridiculous.
Senator Fetterman got more articulate, more coherent, and more independent. And for that, and his recovery, he's owed apologies from people like myself. But weirdly, as he got better, the news around him got worse. Now we're hearing, not when he was running for Senate and he was suffering from a stroke, but now we're hearing he's not well. A report in New York Magazine with the title All by Himself, John Fetterman insists his health is good. The staffers, past and present, said they no longer recognize the man they once knew. The author of this piece in New York Mag wrote, Many of the staffers I spoke with are angry, they're troubled, and they're sad. These are some of Fetterman's truest believers, and they now question his fitness to be senator.
Oh my
They
gosh.
worry he may present a risk to the Democratic Party and maybe even to himself.
So I'll read that in case you guys didn't catch it. Many of the staffers, this is a New York Post, many of the staffers I spoke with are angry. They are troubled, and they are sad. These were some of Fetterman's truest believers, and they now question his fitness to be a senator. They worry he may present a risk to the Democratic Party and maybe even to himself. Oh, please. Jeez, give me a break.
It's as though as more independent he gets, the more
What kind of
that
risk can
there's
John
agreement.
Fetterman be to the Democratic Party? You guys almost already risk everything. John Fetterman would be no more risk to you.
It's as though as more independent he gets, the more there is a green light on the mainstream media to go after John Fetterman.
Yeah.
There's something wrong in the Democrat Party, and it's
Yeah, no
noticeable
kidding.
to those like Stephen A. Smith.
I would say if I had to run, it would be as a Democrat, but I'm not happy with the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party is presently constructed. It would pretty much need to be purged in order for me to assume that I would want to be associated with them and I would garner their support, because I don't like the way they've gone about doing a lot of things for a very, very long period of time. And I think that I don't view Donald Trump as winning the election. I view the Democrats as losing the election, as absolutely positively blowing it with some of their actions.
Stephen A. Smith, a self-described independent, who would run as a Democrat, says the party needs to be purged. The party itself seems to be trying to purge John Fetterman. And then there are those who are purging themselves from the Democrat Party. Alan Villanueva is the former LA County Sheriff, and this is what he had to say recently.
As of today, if you have cameras, they're rolling. Share this on social media. As of today, I'm leaving the party of paid protest to prepare and pronouns. I'm joining the party of faith, family, and freedom.
Hey, Sean.
Okay, let's go back. That's hilarious that he says that. All right, guys, give me a moment. Gosh, I dropped some water. Give me a moment, guys. I dropped water. Just a little on the floor. Yeah. Good thing I don't have one of those suede sneakers today. See? See what happens? The Holy Spirit helps your boy out. I was about to wear one pair, and I put on a different one. It's just water though, but still, water messes up suede. Could stain it. Alright guys, we're gonna run that back because we're gonna see that person's announcement when they announce that they're leaving the Democratic Party. I want you to look at the way he's basically naming the party that he's leaving. I wonder if the Democrats even paid any attention to this. Probably not. But they should have. Because he said something about the party of purple hair and pronouns. I'm like, oh man, see what I'm saying? This is why Stephen A. Smith is not happy with the Democratic Party, or a lot of people for that matter. You have a lot of liberals right now that aren't happy with the Democratic Party either. Not just the American citizens. All right, y'all, give me 1 minute. Amen. That's what happens when I don't have my flask. All right, let's run that back.
Purge John Fetterman. And then there are those who are purging themselves from the Democrat Party. Alan Villanueva is the former LA County Sheriff, and this was what he had to say recently.
As of today, if you have cameras, they're rolling. Share this on social media. As of today, I'm leaving the party of paid protest to prepare and pronouns.
I'm leaving the party of paid protest, purple hair, and pronouns. Oh my
I'm joining the party
gosh. He said, I'm joining the party of faith, family, and freedom. Wow.
Faith, family, and freedom.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
Wow. Paid protest, purple hair, and pronouns. So that's what you're being boiled down to now, Democrat Party. Paid protest, purple hair, and pronouns. This is exactly what I was saying for the last couple months and before the election when I was saying that the Democratic Party is distastefully tone deaf and out of touch with the American people. That's my humble opinion. All right, guys, let's jump over to Dr. Phil Primetime. We got Dr. Phil, the truth about Trump's presidency, 100 days in. Let's take a look.
Well, today is April 30th, and guess what? That marks 100 days. 100 days of the Trump administration. Depending on who you are and what your ideology is, those 100 days may feel like dog years. There's been an awful lot going on. The mainstream media has been on a rampage, painting a very one-sided picture. MSNBC, here's one of their headlines: unadulterated disaster. Trump spends the first 100 days sabotaging what makes America great. Reuters, how Trump waged war on his perceived foes in the first 100 days. NPR, 5 takeaways from the week, nearing a constitutional crisis. So, what's the real story? I'm not saying it's the opposite of everything you just read, but could it be somewhere in the middle? Since Franklin Roosevelt, we have never seen a president do so much in so little time. And how's America seeing it? Well, this is the first time in 20 years that a Republican has won the popular vote. And the Democrats are at their weakest in a generation. I mean, I've seen numbers of 27%.
I've seen lower than that. Let me see here. It says Democratic Party's favorability hits record lows in 2 polls after 2024 losses.
In a generation. I mean, I've seen numbers of 27% approval rating for them. So, I mean, come on. We're really seeing some changes, and the Democrats seem to be self-destructing, rudderless, lost. As of last week, Trump has signed 130 executive orders.
I'm about to sign some very important executive orders.
Now, that means he's keeping his word on his campaign promises, despite roadblock after roadblock after roadblock.
You better take a look up the road there, fella, because we got us a roadblock.
Interference from activist judges, the media, and political opponents. And what do I mean by that? Well, he's getting more than a lawsuit a day. He's got 150 lawsuits against the Trump administration since January 20th in response to his executive orders, as well as executive proclamations and memos. Now, that's according to Fox News Digital, because they've been counting this stuff up as it's been going along. Now, was every decision the right one? Look, it's too early to tell. No one knows. I'll guarantee you there have been mistakes made.
Sure.
It's only been 100 days. We've got to let it play out for a while. But here's what I do know. Things are changing. Things are getting done. And you have to shake it up to break it up. Sometimes you can go in and nudge things along, but sometimes you really have to tear it down to really get anything different. And you can't change what you don't acknowledge. You really can't. If you don't say this is wrong and admit that to yourself, you're never going to get it changed. And sometimes you make the right decision, and sometimes you just have to make the decision right. So let's focus on the facts. Let's focus on some of the key issues here and see how we're doing on some of the macro issues. And I can't go over all 140 or however many have been signed, and I haven't checked today, so I'm sure there have been more. Immigration. This is the lowest level of migrant crossing in 25 years. Now, remember, I've said many times, I'm a big fan of immigration. Remember,
Border crossings plunged to lowest levels in decades, new data.
crossing in 25 years. Now, remember, I've said many times,
this year.
I'm a big fan of immigration. We need it. We have to have it. We need to encourage it. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. In December, the end of the Biden presidency, there were 47,000 apprehensions. In February of 2025, under Trump, there were 8,450 ICE arrests. And among those, there were hundreds of alleged members of the violent Tren de Aragua and MS-13 gangs. And these people were arrested and deported to El Salvador. Now, a lot of people object to that, but it does send a message. You don't want to come here if you are a gang member. You don't want to come here looking to institute a criminal enterprise, because if you get caught, then you're going to get deported. You're going to get deported to a prison. They've arrested leaders of violent anti-Israeli protests on campus. Now, look, that's been very controversial, but I have to tell you something. You want to think about this critically. Have there been mistakes made there? I'm sure there have. But think about what we're talking about here. These are people that are on elite campuses in America that are politicking for, demonstrating for, activating for the demise of America and its allies. They are protesting for and demonstrating for and in support of terrorist groups that have killed Americans and are holding American hostages. Is that okay with you? Is that what you call free speech? Is that okay with you? And let's just do a fact check. Trump has deported 10% fewer immigrants than Biden. So according to NBC, about 11,000 immigrants were deported in February of 2025 versus 12,000 in February of 2024. So just taking that month to compare, 1,000 more were deported under Biden than were deported under Trump. But you don't hear the legacy media, the mainstream media, talking about that. Why? Because they're not reporting the news, they're running an agenda. And if that doesn't offend you, it should. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, that should offend you. That you're turning into something that's labeled as news, and they're not giving you news. They're giving you propaganda. That offends me. It should offend you. Doge, that's another big thing, right? Department of Government Efficiency, run by Elon Musk. Now, reportedly, they have eliminated billions of dollars in government contracts and by shrinking the federal workforce, according to the Cato Institute. Now, Americans want these cuts. They do. There was an April poll, 89% favor auditing all government spending to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. If you ask Americans, they would say they would just cut 40% across the board. Just across the board. Don't even look. Just take 40% across the board. But they're not doing that. They're going through and trying to do an assessment, an analysis. And they're making cuts with some direction. Even so, there have been relentless attacks on Tesla.
Ridiculous.
Because Musk owns Tesla.
Blowing up
There have been
Elon's
both
car.
physical attacks, vandalism, destruction. They're driving by Tesla dealerships and shooting through the windows. One of the drive-bys went through a window and went through a computer monitor. Could there have been somebody sitting behind a computer monitor? There was not, thank God, but there could have been. And it's had an economic impact. Tesla profits plummeted 71% at one point. Now, you should really be concerned about the hypocrisy of this, because these same people that are doing this are the same people that were saying the saving grace for our climate are electric vehicles. The biggest manufacturer of electric vehicles is Tesla, Elon Musk. So he's the fair-haired boy until he starts making cuts through Doge, and that offends some people, so all of a sudden now let's destroy him. Well, good luck with that. He's the richest man on planet Earth. The chance that you're going to make an impact on him financially is not very good. Particularly when you're not actually impacting him directly, you're out ruining the business and the automobiles of people that bought them because you supported them buying them. Now you're putting their name and address on the internet so they can be terrorized in the real world because they agreed with you about protecting the environment. Does that hurt him? No, it doesn't hurt him. They have to go buy parts from him now, so you're making him more money. Come on. But how about the Department of Education? It has been largely dismantled. About half of its staff fired. Why? Good question. How is the Department of Education doing? Well, in 2024, almost a third of fourth graders and eighth graders can't read. They can't read.
That's crazy.
Even at the most fundamental level, they can't read the instructions on a prescription. If it comes with instructions that says take with food, they can't read it. If there are signs on the side of the road that says slippery, they can't read that. How do they get to the 8th grade? So the Department of Education is not doing their job. The nation's report card, academic recovery from COVID, has cost $31 trillion in potential cost to the future GDP from COVID learning loss. That's from the Hoover Institute at Stanford University. So they polled the teachers. Only 20% say students are progressing well academically. 70% of the students say all or most of their peers are bored in class. So they're not doing a great job. And the Department of Education admits failure. There was a quote in January on the 29th this year, quote, despite the billions of dollars that the federal government invests in K through 12 education annually and the approximate $190 billion in federal pandemic funds, our education system continues to fail students across the nation. Speaking of money, in fiscal 2024, the DOE grant spending totaled $150.3 billion. We're spending a lot of money with an agency that is not working. It just is not working. So how's our economy? Well, we're going to call it as it is. The Fox poll says 82% of Americans are extremely or very concerned about inflation. As well they should be. It's interesting how Fox can be critical of Trump, but the mainstream legacy media never says anything good. At least Fox says good and bad. Right. The tariffs on Chinese imports, they're escalating a series of tariffs that have reached 145%. That sent the stock market on a roller coaster. Is it good or is it bad? I don't know yet. I can't say. Maybe that's not a smart thing to do. We will have to see. If it's wrong, they need to change it. They need to back off. Trump said it wouldn't be easy. Look, it's unnerving. But it's not Armageddon. The Dow is still up almost 5% over a year ago and 67% over the past 5 years. But maybe it's not right. Maybe it's costing the average American too much money. Maybe it's going to put some small businesses out of business if they can't afford the increased dollars that they have to pay to get the goods they need to run their businesses. That needs to be taken into consideration. He's doing what few presidents would dare do. America asked for change. And he's creating change. And I'm going to watch and I'm going to see whether it all works or whether it doesn't work.
Let him cook.
He has said some things that I think need to be reconsidered.
Yeah, I do too.
When he was talking to the president of El Salvador, he said, well, it's great that you're taking these illegal aliens that have come here to create crime and advance the agenda of their gangs. And he said, homegrown's next. Wait a minute, what? You're talking about sending Americans to an El Salvadorian prison? Surely not. If that's right, I got a problem. That hasn't happened yet, but if it's in the thinking, I would have a big problem with that. That's why I say I'm going to watch real closely.
I think I would too.
I'm also watching what's happening on universities. He has said, okay, listen, you've got federal money grants coming to these universities. You need to comply with the law or we're going to suspend those grants.
Which makes sense.
Everybody's up in arms about that. But follow the law or I don't want my tax dollars going there. If you are fostering intellectual rot, if you are having students that are being indoctrinated instead of educated, I don't want my tax dollars going there, not a dime, not a penny going there. If you're indoctrinating and not following the law, if you haven't eliminated DEI, if you are practicing racist policies at these universities, then I don't want my money going there.
Right.
We have had a generation of left-leaning students that have now become left-leaning professors that are creating a whole generation of American-hating, radicalized students. That's not okay with me. We need to enforce civil rights. And if they're suspending these federal grants to Harvard and Princeton and Columbia, that's okay with me. We need to have these people comply or not give them federal money. If they want to give up the federal money, then we'll fight this on another level. But I don't want my tax dollars paying them, and I don't think you should either. It's been a busy 100 days. Like I say, sometimes you make the right decision, sometimes you make the decision right, and he needs to be willing to admit if a mistake has been made and fix it right now. If a mistake has been made, if the wrong people have been impacted, he needs to say, that was a mistake, I'm changing it, I'll fix it, we'll do this another way, or we won't do it at all. He has answered more questions, nearly 100 questions from the press during his first 3 cabinet meetings this year. That's 20 times the number of questions President
Trump's first 3 cabinet meetings feature more press questions and answers than all of Biden's. Jeez.
Biden answered during 4 years in office, according to the Washington Times. So, 100-day marker. A lot of things have changed. Let's be open-minded and see how they work out. I promise I'll tell you the truth.
Yeah, so I want to stop that right there, guys, because I want you guys to go to Dr. Phil's channel and give him his due views, and I do that often here, where I'll kind of cut someone's video short because I want you guys to go do that. I do like to sit down and watch and react with you guys, so I like Dr. Phil's take on it. I watched a little bit earlier, didn't watch the whole thing, but I thought he had a very balanced perspective. I like the way he attacked it. You know, I like the way he came at it. And really, he has a great point when he says that, you know, when he's referring to the universities and he says, listen, you are getting federal funding. Therefore, because you are receiving these federal funds, you must follow the law, right? That's not hard to understand. It's not. I don't know why people are making it difficult. It's easy, right? If you're private, if you're a private university and maybe you have enough donations to where you don't need the federal funding, right? But nonetheless, the White House with the current cabinet that is in place is saying if you are receiving federal funds, you need to be compliant. You need to be following federal law. What does that look like today, Q? That looks like no DEI policies. So if you are a university and your DEI program or policies are your bread and butter, well, guess what's about to go away? Your bread and butter, right? No, like racist policies. A lot of the things that we're seeing, no trans athletes, right? There are only 2 genders, so no overly promoting of like you being able to change your gender. If you are receiving federal funding, you need to be following the law. It's a hard pill to swallow, right? But not a hard concept to understand. So that part, I know a lot of people think it sucks, but hard for me to argue there. You know, you're getting federal funding. It's no different than if you were getting a loan from someone and they made you sign a contract before you had your funds issued to you, like, hey, you're gonna pay on this date. Hey, you're not allowed to miss this amount of payments. Hey, you can't make a payment less than this amount. You know, hey, boundaries, borders, stipulations, so can't argue with any of that. You know, you're receiving federal funding, you're going to have to follow federal law. All right, guys, so with that being said, we are going to jump over to Thomas Sowell. Shout out to Thomas Sowell. It says, Thomas Sowell reacts to Trump's first 100 days in office. Now, I wanted to do it from 2 different perspectives. We have Dr. Phill, the very known Dr. Phill, white Caucasian older man who is television's doctor, television's therapist, right? We'll call him America's therapist because everybody watches Dr. Phill. And then we have Thomas Sowell, Black African American conservative, some would say black economist, very well known man, very much conservative leaning and has been Republican voting. I love Thomas Sowell's take on a lot of different things. He's taught me a lot throughout the years. He's made me change my perspective a lot. He's made me look at things from a view that I didn't always see before, or maybe I didn't always consider in my younger years. So let's take a look at President Trump's 100 days from his perspective. Let's jump right in.
One of the most dangerous places in America is between a politician and a television camera. But during Donald Trump's first 100 days in office, it became equally perilous to stand between a journalist and a panic button. We live in an era where the narrative often supplants the news, where symbolism replaces substance, and where posturing takes precedence over policy. Nowhere was this more evident than in the media coverage and intellectual response to Trump's return to the presidency. The hysteria, the hyperbole, and the harangues were unprecedented, but hysteria is not history. And the sound of moral indignation is not the same as the weight of evidence. What mattered was not whether Trump's decisions worked, but whether they offended. And in a world ruled by the anointed, that was enough to declare him dangerous. I am not in the business of defending personalities. In fact, in a sane society, policies would matter more than personalities. But ours is not such a society. When Trump re-entered office in January of...
Notice what Thomas Sowell said. He said, in a sane society, policies would matter more than personalities. Okay.
2025, the prevailing narrative in elite circles, academic, media, political, was not simply that he was wrong, but that he was a threat to democratic order. That in itself should cause thinking individuals to pause. The more an argument depends on delegitimizing one's opponent rather than addressing his policies, the more likely it is that the argument cannot withstand scrutiny.
Nice.
Trump's second term began with that fundamental premise that dissent from progressive orthodoxy was not just wrong-headed, but dangerous. And yet, what did the policies actually show? Let us begin with the economy. Trump's universal 10% tariff on all imports, larger tariffs on Chinese goods, produced an immediate market reaction. Prices rose, yes. So did wages in specific sectors. The trade retaliation hurt some industries, but invigorated others, especially domestic manufacturing. Energy policy shifted overnight. Climate regulations were dismantled by executive order. Fossil fuel production surged, and energy independence reemerged as a central goal. Well, it was a calculated shift, pragmatic, not ideological.
Yeah.
As I've long written, regulation is often the imposition of the preferences of elites who bear few of the costs. Trump's economic policy was rooted in the inverse, protecting those who live with the consequences of government decisions.
If you saw the news, but Fox News is claiming President Trump is
innovations was the creation of the Department of Government Efficiency, protecting those who live with the consequences of government decisions. One of the more radical administrative innovations was the creation of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, headed by Elon Musk. With that appointment came a torrent of agency reviews, bureaucratic cuts, and automation-driven streamlining. Thousands of federal jobs were eliminated or consolidated. Predictably, the outcry was intense. But beneath the panic was an old truth. Government exists to serve, not to sustain itself. Entire departments, long protected by inertia, were forced to justify their existence. As painful as it was to the Beltway class, the message was simple. Performance, not permanence, is the standard. Trump's immigration crackdown resumed with unprecedented assertiveness. Beyond expanding border surveillance and increasing ICE raids, Trump authorized the transfer of certain illegal immigrants to Guantanamo Bay detention facilities, setting off a storm of legal challenges. But the policy framework was clear. Symbolic enforcement had become real enforcement. The critics cried cruelty. But as I've often said, if you do not control who enters your country, you do not have a country. Compassion is not the abdication of law. For the first time in years, immigration policy treated illegality as a fact, not a protected category. The moral claims of open border advocates were replaced by the logistical demands of sovereignty. Foreign policy in early 2025 veered sharply from multilateral consensus. Trump's demand that NATO members meet their defense spending obligations was no longer a polite request. It was backed with threats of troop withdrawals. America exited several international accords, including those on environmental and digital governance, citing a need to prioritize national autonomy over global consensus. Even the suggestion of purchasing Greenland resurfaced, not necessarily as policy, but as a symbol of American will and vision. Trump's foreign policy, often mocked as incoherent, followed a consistent principle. America's strategic interests, not elite abstractions, should guide international engagement. That may not make for eloquent summit speeches, but it reflects the priorities of people who pay taxes and bury soldiers. Trump's domestic cultural agenda targeted one of the most entrenched institutions of elite power, the administrative enforcement of progressive values. Within weeks, DEI mandates in federal hiring, contracting, and military promotion were repealed. Universities receiving federal funds were warned that preferential treatment based on race or gender would face penalties. Critics called it regressive. But what it did, in effect, was reestablish a basic principle. The state should not engineer equal outcomes by unequal means. Preferential policies, as I've long argued, not only fail to uplift the disadvantaged, but also perpetuate group conflict. Trump's policies reframe the debate. Competence, not identity, would be the new coin of the realm. Meanwhile, the media's posture toward Trump hardened into outright antagonism.
Competence, not identity. This is good. I want you guys to go check out the rest of this on Thomas Sowell's Reacts. It's probably a 9-minute clip, and we're going to stop at about 6 minutes in. But I literally loved his take on it, and I really wanted it to be shown to people who, maybe some black and brown Hispanic people who don't keep up with news maybe as much as I do, because I want you guys to be made privy to some of these things. This matters if this is Thomas Sowell talking about this, because sometimes people think you can never hear an African American man talking this way. And this man is sitting here listing out all of the things that President Trump has done in his first 100 days. And oh, by the way, going on record to say he's done some of the greatest things that any president has stepped in office to do, just based on the results we're seeing in just his first 100 days. Also going on record to say that we're not so much of a sane economy, right? Or a sane nation right now, because in a sane nation, right, policy would supplant personality. But it seems like in America, that doesn't happen, right? It's so crazy. So he had a great take on this, guys. Please go over to Thomas Sowell's channel and look at the rest of this. I don't want to, take all of, I won't take them, but go give him his due views on his channel. Shout out to Thomas. So, all right, guys. So with that being said, we're going to jump over to the final clip of the live stream. Shout out to Cliff Buell. Up on the chopping block today is, are you headed to heaven or hell? Only 2%. That's disgusting. Of churches do this. So let's watch. Let's see what Cliff's talking about.
So many real Christians are struggling to find a good church. Watch.
Only 2% of churches. This is hard to believe. A recent survey done by the American Culture and Faith Institute interviewed churches across the nation and asked them very basic questions about doctrine. Did Jesus live a sinless life? Is Satan real or imaginary? 70% of the churches surveyed did not line up with the basic teachings of the Bible, which leaves only 100,000 churches in America who believe the core teachings of the Word of God. But of those 100,000 churches, when asked, do you preach these things? Do you teach these things? Only 2% said that they will teach those things from Scripture. They will teach what the Bible teaches because they don't want to offend their congregants. They're not going to preach and teach what the Bible says about the current issues of the day. Only 2% of churches in America are actually preaching relevant messages from the Word of God to our culture. We need a revival.
This is why.
That was heinous. 2% out of 100,000. I don't think I'm that shocked. So this is also coming from somebody who loves church, is a Christian, loves ministry, has had the opportunity to serve in ministry, has had the opportunity to be the hand and feet of Jesus on the street and in neighborhoods and in communities. And when I hear this number, it saddens me, but it does not surprise me. So what do we got on regular basic doctrines, he said, right? So let's see if I can go back to, for you to preach these, the word of core American teaches. Basic teachings of do not, let's see if I'm here. Churches surveyed.
Surveyed did not line up with the basic teachings of the Bible, which leaves only 100,000 to interview churches across the nation and ask them very basic questions about doctrine. Did Jesus live a sinless life? Is Satan real or imaginary? 70%.
Just over those two questions, they struggle. Did Jesus live a sinless life? Yes. Is Satan real or imaginary? Satan is real. This is interesting to me, but it's not shocking to me because then he goes on record to say out of those 100,000, only 2% are doing this, and only 2% are actually preaching on these things. What things? Did Jesus live a sinless life? Yes. Is Satan imaginary or real? He's real. So, but only 2% of churches are willing to go on record and preach, teach, or say that. That is the part that's not surprising to me. Also, the part that's very saddening to me. Probably also, if I'm transparent with you guys, because this is another conversation for a different live stream on a different day, because that's just not the focus here. If we were focusing on, let's say something like a fireside chat where I'm talking about maybe an experience or something with church or ministry, I would like to do that more like a fireside chat setting kind of / podcasting set. Not really right now where we're going back and forth with this, but on the Christian clip, totally appropriate. So not wanting to offend your congregants is such a real thing. I've sat with pastors who are my friends. I've sat with pastors who are my mentors, and I've even sat with pastors who are junior to me, meaning younger, and across the board, I've heard this. Not wanting to offend my congregants, like not wanting to preach about sin, not wanting to preach about certain sin, right? Like maybe we're okay with preaching about adultery and fornication, but or I take that back because really you don't hear that. What I really do hear is we're okay with preaching about homosexuality and let's say fornication, but maybe adultery never really is talked about much, at least not in a setting of a sermon, right? Like a sermon setting. Maybe pornography is not discussed as much, right, in a setting like a Sunday service setting, right? Maybe I don't know what it looks like to God when you're cheating at work or lying on your job or something like that. These are things that I have heard pastors say across the board, that these are hard topics for them to preach in fear that they will lose congregants. Here's where it was most shocking to me, where I'll be transparent with you guys and let you guys in on a little bit of what it looked like for me as a newer person walking close to Christ. It was shocking to me. I literally, sometimes I feel bad about this, but I remember, I felt like when I first started to walk with Jesus, because growing up in the church and in Christianity was something that I did do. But when I started to have to answer to who he was to me personally and walk with him, it was interesting the ways and the things that I found out about him. And it's challenging because while you don't want to offend anybody, the closer I walked with Jesus, I realized that that's not how Jesus moved. Jesus never made me feel like he was trying to hurt or offend me, but always tried to maybe, let's say, let me know something in love, right? I think what my pastor friends and other pastors have struggled with is at least I hope this is most of it, how do I preach this and it actually sounds like love? I think that sometimes certain topics are challenging, right? Especially if there are people in your congregation that you know are maybe struggling or dealing with them. And you're like, how do I talk about this and it comes off like love when I'm reading it and I'm studying it and I'm getting ready for Sunday service and it's like all I hear is I don't know, hate, condemnation, you're in trouble. Like sometimes it's like that. And I think, you know, even when I've had those moments, I've always gotten just real still and I'm just like, Holy Spirit, help me see this differently. Like help me see this in a way where maybe I'm not made privy to right now. Maybe I'm missing something. I'll ask specifically, help me see grace in this because I'm struggling to see it. You know, help me see your heart in what this means. And I think that God honors when we're vulnerable like that. So 2%, heartbreaking number, but totally understandable. I mean, I've heard pastors say, man, it's already hard to get people in church, especially young people. So what do you think they're going to do if I'm up in here talking about some sin? And I'm like, well, some people are going to cry and give their life to Jesus. Some may walk out. But either way, right, it's the one that we're after. It's the one that heaven rejoices over. So, yeah, sad number, but keep that in mind, guys. When you're looking for a church, maybe you're trying to get to know Jesus, you just giving your life to Christ, you're looking for a home church, I would say definitely look for a church that's a Bible-based church, you know, that you see the teachings coming out of the Bible. You actually hear and see in the sermons where the pastor is referring to scripture and text. And, you know, as far as congruency and if the pastor's heretical or if you're newer to scripture in church, you might not be privy to that. So it's important to have people that can mentor you or speak into your life, big brothers or sisters or mom and dads in the faith that can help you discern, you know, if you're in that type of environment and if you're not, to get into one. You know, that's super important, like the community that you surround yourself around when it comes to church. All right, guys, so with that being said, my wife is waiting for me. We have to resume our chilling evening, so I'm going to let you guys go for the rest of your Wednesday. Enjoy your day. I will see you guys next time, which is tomorrow for our regularly scheduled live stream. I'm going to try to jump on a little earlier tomorrow. Today was about 7. It wasn't too bad. I kind of purposely did that today, but somewhere between 4, 6 tomorrow, 4 and 7. So, yeah, with that being said, guys, what do I always say? Take care of yourselves, take care of one another, love yourselves, love one another, and be peaceful. Peace.